A weekly project review has just ended, and people are standing up, closing laptops, and gathering their things. Most of the discussion felt indirect phrases, like "we might want to revisit this," or "there could be another approach," floated around without pointing at anyone in particular. But as the room empties, one manager quietly asks a team member to stay behind. The tone shifts. The language becomes more direct. Specific decisions are mentioned. Specific actions are named. What was vague in the group setting becomes explicit in a smaller, more contained interaction. This shift is not unusual. In many workplaces, feedback often becomes clearer and more direct as the context narrows. In group settings, language tends to stay general. But in one-on-one situations, it becomes more explicit. This pattern appears repeatedly across teams, roles, and industries. Part of this comes from how people manage social exposure. In a group, feedback is not just about information, it also signals status, alignment, and risk. Saying something too directly in front of others can create unintended consequences. It can shift attention toward a specific individual, potentially altering how others perceive them. So instead, people often rely on softer phrasing or indirect suggestions. These forms of communication allow the message to exist without fully committing to it in a public way. But when the setting changes, so does the calculation. In a one-on-one interaction, the social audience is removed. The same feedback no longer carries the same level of reputational risk. The goal becomes less about managing group perception and more about reducing ambiguity. Directness, in this case, is not necessarily about honesty alone, it's about efficiency under lower social risk. Over time, people begin to anticipate this pattern. In meetings, they may listen not just to what is said, but to what is implied. Phrases that seem neutral on the surface are interpreted as signals. A comment like "we can explore other options" may be understood as a soft rejection. This creates a layer of shared understanding, where indirect language still carries meaning, even without explicit wording. This also leads to decision shortcuts. Instead of waiting for fully explicit feedback in every situation, people start using context to fill in the gaps. Who said it, when they said it, and in what tone becomes just as important as the words themselves. In environments where direct feedback is delayed or context-dependent, these shortcuts help maintain workflow without constant clarification. At the same time, there are situations where feedback becomes explicit. Even in group settings, this tends to happen when alignment is more important than individual sensitivity. For example, when deadlines are tight, or when decisions affect multiple teams, ambiguity becomes more costly. In these cases, the risk of misunderstanding outweighs the risk of directness. So communication shifts again, this time toward clarity, even in public. These shifts are not random. They reflect how people balance two competing needs: maintaining social stability and ensuring accurate understanding. In some moments, preserving relationships or group cohesion takes priority, leading to more indirect communication. In others, reducing uncertainty becomes more important, leading to clearer, more explicit feedback. Over time, individuals adjust their behavior based on the patterns they observe. Someone who repeatedly receives vague feedback in meetings, but clear feedback afterward, may begin to expect that clarity comes later. They might wait for follow-up conversations instead of seeking immediate clarification. Others might adapt differently, choosing to ask direct questions in the moment to reduce uncertainty. The environment itself also plays a role. Teams that operate under high accountability or fast decision cycles tend to develop more explicit communication norms. In contrast, teams that prioritize consensus or long-term collaboration may rely more on indirect signals to navigate differences without creating friction. What's noticeable is not just whether feedback is explicit or not, but when it becomes explicit. The timing often reflects an underlying calculation, one that weighs clarity against potential social cost. And once that pattern becomes familiar, the distinction between what is said and when it is said starts to carry its own meaning, even before the words themselves are fully understood.